Alright, welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today I'm going to be breaking down Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria, or as McGregor would say, Ilia Taptato, yeah? But before we get into it, let me know what you guys think. As far as International Fight Week's concerned, UFC 317, aside from the main event is amazing, very hyped for that, don't get me wrong. However, as far as the main card as a whole, and compared to a lot of the recent pay-per-views we've been getting, it's a decent card. It's not a bad card, don't get me wrong. But as far as International Fight Week, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Because going through it, like I said, main event, blockbuster, amazing fight. Pantoja versus Kaikara France, decent fight. However, is that, pay-per-view blockbuster material? Probably not. As far as the next fight, the feature fight, Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano, they're both coming off of losses. And I feel like this could be a fight night main event, but as far as International Fight Week main card, feature fight, nah, I just don't think it's worthy of that. As far as the next one, Brandon Royval, he is ranked number 1, I'll give him that, versus Joshua Van. I get it's a short notice replacement. However, Joshua Van, he does have a lot of hype going on him, especially with the hardcores, but as far as, hype with the casuals and get everyone excited, I don't know. And then Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Payne Talbot's coming off of a loss, and he's not even ranked. Neither is Felipe Lima. So how are we having a unranked fight? Especially, Payne Talbot's not this burning prospect anymore because he just lost. A lot of people are like, fraud check, which, that's the thing. Honey Barcelos is not a bad fighter, but as far as the standard people are holding Talbot to, he's definitely not there yet. So as far as that, to have him on the main card of the International Fight Week, I disagree with that as well. But like I said, these aren't bad fights. It's just, I feel like there should have been a lot higher ranked fighters on this card. Bigger matchups, more stakes, bigger names. I feel like there's not a lot of storylines going in this fight night, or pay-per-view, sorry. Aside from Topuria and Oliveira. Renato Moicano, he will have his moments on the mic, but I feel like the same thing with Oliveira. Beneil Dariush and Oliveira don't really give much when it comes to trash talk, so Ilia Topuria and Renato Moicano are probably going to be talking to themselves most of the time. And yeah, I just feel like I said, it could be a lot better. It is what it is. This is the UFC as of 2025. They're not really listening to a lot of the fans, and they don't really care what a lot of us have to say. It is what it is, but I don't know. I just wish there was, a bit more heat on this card. Because I am excited for it, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Aside from the main event, all the other fights are kind of just it is what it is. Obviously the title fight with Pantoja is important, but the rest of them, it's just I don't know, man. Call me crazy. I don't know. I feel like it could have been a lot better. But yeah, moving on. So, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. Ilia Topuria is currently 28 years old. Charles Oliveira is 35. And that's getting up there when it comes to the 155 weight division, because a lot of these lighter weight classes, 35 is kind of old. Obviously, you can get away with it in middleweight, light heavyweight, and all that, but you need your speed and your agility in these weight classes, and that's the first thing to go on these fighters, especially. We look at the records here. Ilia Topuria, perfect 16-0. Charles Oliveira, 35 wins, 10 losses, and 1 no contest. 46 fights at 35. Charles Oliveira's got all the miles and then some on him, right? So, and not only that, you look at a lot of his recent fights, he's getting dropped in most of them. And that's a really bad sign when it comes to fighting a nuclear power puncher with Ilia Topuria. As far as heights go, Ilia Topuria is 5'7". He's going to be very shorter for this weight class. However, that means he has a lower center of gravity, and he won't be able to be taken down as much. And not only that, he'll be able to fill in a lot more, adding to more power. So he may not have the reach and the frame for this weight class, but don't get it twisted when it comes to power. As far as height-wise for Charles Oliveira, 5'10", a good height for lightweight. As far as reach goes, Ilia Topuria 69-inch reach, Charles Oliveira 74-inch reach. So there you go. Height and reach, Oliveira takes that. And then yeah, as far as the odds go, I'm pretty sure it was plus or minus 500 for Topuria on one of these websites, because it's not showing the odds on the UFC website, but I'm pretty sure I've seen minus 500. And a lot of people were outraged by that. They're like, what? How is it possible? And maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but I feel like the margin should be very wide. Maybe a minus 300 or minus 400, but minus 500 is a little crazy, because Charles Oliveira, he is the former champion, and he still has the heart of the lion. Don't get me wrong, but getting into the matchup itself, as far as power goes, a lot of people are saying, well, how is Ilia Topuria's power going to translate to this weight class? He knocked Jai Herbert out cold. That was a lightweight fight, right? And as far as Charles Oliveira, we all know he's got power, but he doesn't have one punch out cold power. He has the power like we've seen with Gaethje, right? Right down the pipe, boom, knocked him on his ass. But as far as like out cold, no. He's more the power where it's just like you knock him down and then you either get a submission or the TKO. But as far as one punch knockout power, give it to Topuria. Obviously, height and reach, that's in Charles Oliveira's favor. As far as dynamic striking, I would give the dynamic striking to Charles Oliveira. He does a lot more like flying knees, high kicks, and everything like that. Where Ilia Topuria, I'm pretty sure one of the stats is like he's never thrown a head kick or a body kick. Like Topuria only goes for the calf kicks and the boxing, right? And obviously wrestling as well, and jiu-jitsu. But as far as striking goes, I give the overall toolbox to Oliveira. As far as grappling, a lot of people are saying, oh, easy. Oliveira's the most submissions in UFC history. However, Ilia Topuria, he started off as a submission artist, and we haven't seen him really use a lot of his grappling against the elite competition, so I guess there's a lot to see and find out with this fight, but I really don't feel like this fight's going to go to the ground. I feel like Topuria, the same thing with Makhachev, right? When Oliveira fought Makhachev and he got knocked down and he was waiting for Makhachev, because most of the time when Charles Oliveira fights these opponents, he'll get dropped, he'll go on the ground, and he'll use it as a time to recover because he knows a lot of them are afraid of his jiu-jitsu, whereas Makhachev wasn't, and I feel like that'll be the same thing with Topuria. I feel like, obviously, you look at Arman as well. Arman was not afraid to go to the ground as well, but I feel like Topuria, obviously he could tango with him on the ground, but I just don't think he wants to, and that's if he's still conscious if he gets dropped, right? Because Topuria has a different power. And I don't think he's going to give Oliveira the time to recover as well. I feel like Topuria, especially, I was thinking it's like, okay, so everyone knows how Topuria's going to win by knockout. How can Oliveira win? And like I said, he's got the dynamic striking and everything. And I feel like obviously he can land a flying knee or one of these head kicks. Like the same thing with the Jai Herbert exchange where Jai Herbert faked a boxing exchange, pulled away, head kick. And that's the thing. People want to question Ilia Topuria. You can't question his heart because Jai Herbert literally landed a clean head kick, and Topuria wasn't even expecting it. Dropped Topuria. So that's like, we know Topuria doesn't have an iron chin, but at the same time, who wouldn't get dropped by a flush head kick that you weren't aware of? So I feel like you can't say that, but he recovered and then he knocked him out. So Topuria, as much as he hasn't been through as much wars and adversity as Charles Oliveira goes, he shows that he has heart, right? And Charles Oliveira, I was thinking, okay, so what is Charles Oliveira's advantages, right? So he could be on the outside with range, a lot of his kicks and jab heavy, but as far as striking goes, I feel like Charles Oliveira, he loves his knees, so he can tangle up in a tie clinch and go for a lot of the knees that wouldn't land on a taller opponent. But I feel like Topuria, he wouldn't let that happen because the strength of Topuria, and not only that, the body shots. Like we've seen how the body shots affect someone like Max Holloway with a similar frame like Oliveira. And I just feel like Oliveira's not going to be able to hold Topuria down, even if he does get him to the ground. I feel like he's not going to be able to hold him stationary in a clinch. I feel like Topuria won't play that game. And then I feel like Topuria, body, head. Honestly, I dread this fight more than I'm excited for it, simply because I'm a fan of both. But like Topuria said, I feel bad for Oliveira because this was supposed to be Makhachev versus Topuria. And I feel like there's a reason why these odds are so big because, like I said, you got a fighter who has a questionable chin versus a fighter with nuclear power, but he's not like a Chandler where it's just like looping. Topuria is laser focused with precision striking where he's not just going to wing punches while Oliveira's against the fence. He's going to systematically break Oliveira down. And I just feel like I said, Oliveira has way too many miles on the clock. He's been dropped way too many times. And I really don't see how Oliveira, maybe he can get a Hail Mary submission when he's on the ground. But other than that, I really don't see how it gets in Oliveira's favor. And not only that, you look at recent opponents, right? Ilia Topuria knocked out Max Holloway. Who's even dropped Max Holloway? And then before that, Alexander Volkanovski knocked him out. Obviously, with Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, there's both asterisks there because Holloway was coming down from 155, and in hindsight, it was a terrible decision. And then Volkanovski, he was recently knocked out by Makhachev and then he fought Topuria. So a lot of people were saying that, oh, if he didn't get knocked out, he wouldn't have been knocked out by Topuria. But at the same time, I feel like the Topuria-Volkanovski fight would have ended the same way, just a bit later in the fight, right? Maybe like rounds 4 or 5. And then before that, he put on a master class against Josh Emmett, where you see like Lerone Murphy, right? Didn't engage with Josh Emmett and outclassed him. But Topuria went in there and got a 10-7 round against a nuclear power puncher as well in Josh Emmett. Whereas he decided to go in there and fight Josh Emmett. He didn't just prance around the outside. He went in there and fought him and lived to tell the tale. So he can enter the fire whenever he wants and do amazing. And then before that, he submitted Bryce Mitchell, which in hindsight, Bryce Mitchell's not really elite, but to submit a grappling artist, kudos to him. And then you got Oliveira. So Oliveira took Michael Chandler in their rematch to a decision, where we've just seen what Paddy the Baddy did to Michael Chandler. Obviously, MMA math is not, doesn't equal everything all the time. However, taking Michael Chandler to a decision, not a great look. And then he lost by split decision to Arman Tsarukyan, which Arman Tsarukyan clearly won that fight. Oliveira did have some moments, but obviously Arman got that one done. And before that, he knocked out Beneil Dariush, which is a good win, but Beneil Dariush hasn't been doing great as of lately. And then before that, he lost it to Islam Makhachev. He lost the belt. Now, as far as momentum go, I would have to give it to Topuria as well, because literally undefeated, knocked out 2 of the greatest featherweights of all time, whereas Oliveira is going tooth and nail with the number 1 contender in Arman Tsarukyan. Took Chandler to a decision, which, in hindsight, it's like, what? Like, especially the way he fought him in the first fight. And then Beneil Dariush, decent, but, it is what it is. And then he lost it to Islam Makhachev. So, momentum and strength of schedule in the last 3, obviously Makhachev's pound for pound number 1, but as far as the last 3, because that's the thing, Oliveira fought Makhachev in 2022. So, recently, Topuria's got the better strength of schedule. And I just feel like all signs are pointing towards Topuria winning this fight. And not only that, I want Topuria to win as well. Like I said, I like both of them. I don't want to see Oliveira out conscious or out unconscious. But I don't know. I truly cannot see this fight going any other way than Topuria winning. And I know that's upsetting for a lot of the Oliveira fans, but you got to call a spade, man. You look at all the advantages and you look at all the statistics and everything, and Charles Oliveira gets hit way too much. And Topuria is so sharp, so calculated, and I feel like Topuria beats him everywhere. Aside from maybe like grappling, which there's a little bit of a question mark there, but yeah, as far as striking, no brainer. And Topuria is so defensively responsible too. I just don't think Oliveira is going to have even a chance to tee off on him. So yeah, honestly, Topuria knockout. Rounds, I want to say round 1, but I just don't want to. I'll say round 2. Round 2, Topuria by knockout. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.